Yes. I don't want to name them, but even the people there know they are corrupt. In fact, that's why they have the money. So corrupt people become models.
Well, it's a big challenge that we have as a country, because while we recognize that the public is the ultimate guarantor of integrity in our society, we also realize that one of the biggest challenges we have is actually our political system. It's the one that seeds and incubates corruption. The whole system is actually based on a corruption model where money can buy you anything, politically speaking. And when you mix that with our parochial ethnic clan leanings, then you find that the imperatives of integrity sometimes are overshadowed by the parochial considerations of ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to Mwakazi. I understand Mwakazi has got some views from the members of public.
Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed, Bwana Mutegi. Now, just looking at some of your comments coming in, SMS, this is Ng'ethe Ikanye says, corruption, as long as the court's penalties and process remain harsh and severe to Mwananchi, bribery is here to stay. I would rather bribe a police officer with 5K, that's 5,000 shillings, than spend a whole day in court, get locked in like a criminal, and be fined 20,000 shillings for a simple traffic violation of lights or over speeding. In fact, we beg the police to take the bribe because the government has already negotiated for them. All right, let's move on to another one very quickly. Eric Clyte says, it's not a problem, it's a lifestyle in Kenya with very high stiff penalty to be paid. Who would mind the shortcut? And then another one, Eric Rapada says, good question. It's not a problem. It's a desired talent by a majority of Kenyans. The more corrupt, the more famous you become. In the majority stronghold, corruption is a gift that earns you high position in our society. So let people not say it's bad, they love it. As to reward the most corrupt to fight it. Okay, so that's just about it. Let's move on to our Twitter handle, at @power_breakfast. This is Paul Saha says, corruption reaches the point where you park your car and have to pay someone directed by council askaris to watch it for you. Peter Oluoch says, is that a question? Corruption is not just a problem, it's a national disaster. And a final one here, perhaps, So let's perhaps have this. Honorable Eliud Njiru says, corruption is too much and we have devolved it. Lack of transparency, nepotism, hence impunity. The poor have no space in Kenya. Remember, you can send in your comments, and you can also call us 071 9777777, and we'll be talking to you. In the meantime, we had an opportunity to actually get views from different people across the country. Let's listen to some of them.
Watu wengi huwa wanafikiria corruption ni hongo, kama vile mtu anaweza pewa hongo ndio afanye kazi fulani, lakini sio hivyo. Corruption ni vile unaweza kuwa kwa ofisi fulani uwe unatumia pesa za umma vibaya ama mahali pengine kama hapo, lakini watu wengi hawaelewi kabisa.
Ilikuwa ni wakati wa usiku, lakini ni kitambo kidogo. Nilikuwa ninatoka kujivinjari, lakini nikakutana na polisi, so kunishika. Ndio sasa ni avoid ile mashtaka ya sijui ulevi na nini, lazima ningepata na kitu kidogo ndio nitoke ndani.
Kuna ufisadi wa pesa, kuna ufisadi wa mawazo pia. Mtu aweze kutumia mamlaka kuweza kuweka mawazo katika njia ambayo sio sawa na akapata ile anachokitaka kwa njia kama hiyo.
Ufisadi bwana ni kugandamiza walio chini.
Lazima kila pale ukienda ni polisi, we ni polisi, lazima utoe kitu kidogo, uende kotini, uwe barabara, lazima upeane pesa. Ndio Kenya tuendelee na mbele.
Kama kazi yetu tunafanyaga ya kuuza smoki, kajua na kujaga, uwezi pelekwa ndani, lazima wahonge. Sasa itabidi utafuta pesa zako wape, jo wanakuharakisha, usipowapea wanakupeleka ndani. Unajua ukipelekwa kule uwezi jitoa.
Kuna wakati nilisafiri na polisi wakanishukisha chini. Sasa ikawa wanipeleke ndani, lakini wakaniambia kama uko na 500 lipa alafu tukuachilie. Basi ikabidi nitoe, sababu ukienda kule ndani hakuna mtu atakutetea.
According to me, is inadequacy in income. You have it, but it is not enough for you. So you need much more through corrupt practices.
All right. So those are some of the comments, some of the views from different parts of this country, from Kisumu to Mombasa. People know what corruption is. And then it was quite interesting to hear of the corruption of the mind. Wow. It's not just about cash. It cuts across the board. And of course, today we want to just find out, is this corruption a problem? Is corruption a problem in the country? And how can we slay the dragon of corruption? And perhaps you could also send in your experiences. All right, so let's get back to Mutegi Njau as he interviews the Executive Director, TI.
Mr. Kimeu, you can see Kenyans is like corruption is entrenched in the veins. Since the coming of the Kibaki government in 2002, the government said the zero tolerance to corruption.
Yes.
Of course, it didn't work.
No.
We have Anglo-Leasing
And
many other mega corruption things. We are hearing some of them even now at the port of Mombasa, at the refinery, at all over the places. Yet there are so many laws that have been passed since Kibaki took over. Many laws, including the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Act.
Yes.
Why is it that we are not unable? It looks like we are unable, despite all these laws, to slay this dragon of corruption, from the grassroots to the national level.
Well, I think, Mutegi, there are a number of factors that contribute to that. First of all, we have laws, and those laws are not strong enough. But that is not to say that if they were applied, they would not take us far. I think if they were applied as they are, they would take us quite far. But we recognize that those laws have weaknesses. They have inherent weaknesses that have been put there, in my view.
Deliberately or by mistake?
I mean, some of them you can almost think it's deliberate, because if you follow the debate, for example, that happened in Parliament in 2011 on the Ethics and Anti-Corruption
Commission Act.
You realize that it was a very charged debate. It was a very, very charged debate. Members of Parliament then were concerned more about getting rid of the directorate of the Commission and not looking at a strong anti-corruption law. And
they were interested in removing PLO Lumumba
and his team, yes.
And his team.
Yes, from the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission.
Yes.
And therefore, they legislated, in our view, what was a law against individuals other than a law against corruption. And it is that for that reason that we are actually calling on Parliament to revisit that law and debate it. Because it was debated with those emotions. You would remember that it was the time, at a time when the Anti-Corruption Commission was pursuing prosecutions against an MP and a person related to an MP. Two high-profile cases that came into the public domain, and in my view were used to rally Parliament against the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. So there is a weakness there. You will realize that it has taken us almost 3 years now to get the commission fully constituted. The chair of the commission has just been appointed. But even more telling, of course, is the resources that commission has been allocated. If you look at the budget of about 1 billion Kenyan shillings, and you compare to the task ahead, and considering that over the last 3 years, that commission has lost a lot of staff, at least not less than 6 of the senior staff have joined the judiciary and other independent commissions. That long transition has weakened the commission. And that commission needs to be, new life needs to be breathed into it so that it can recover the capacity that it had lost during this transition period. But the law itself needs to be revisited because if you look at the law, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission law, Parliament went also for the minimalist approach. It just went to set up an institutional framework. But the definition of the crimes that they were supposed to investigate are found in laws that were enacted much earlier. There are incoherences, there are overlaps that are used in our view, to make sure the commission does not move properly. But then there's also the relationship between the commission and the Director of Public Prosecutions. You know, the Director of Public Prosecution is constitutionally empowered to mount prosecutions in this country. And what the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission does is to investigate corrupt allegations and then come up with findings and recommendations and forward them to the Director of Public Prosecution, who can prosecute or may not prosecute. And in some cases, the Director of Public Prosecution has actually gone ahead and terminated cases that had been mounted in the courts. So you have a challenge there about how you exercise the power of prosecution accountably and in a manner that is in the public interest.
Would you recommend that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission get prosecutorial powers?
Well, that is one of the recommendations that we have made, and the recommendations, we've made this recommendation also not in a vacuum, but knowing very well that during the debate on this bill, there was divided opinion on whether the commission should be given prosecution powers or not. We know that all the directors of that commission have always asked for prosecution powers. But even more importantly, if you look at the Jubilee Manifesto, it states very clearly that the Jubilee government is committed to giving the commission prosecution powers. That is an important step. But even more important is to work out a relationship between the DPP and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission that facilitates and protects the public interest. There are countries in Africa and others in other parts of the world that have mounted successful anti-corruption wars without having their commissions having prosecution powers. But that has depended mainly on how the institutions involved in this collaborate. And in places like South Africa and Botswana, you will notice that the success rates in prosecution are in the 90s. While in this country, there's almost nothing to talk home about. So we think that it's an area that needs to be revisited, and a robust public debate needs to take place both outside Parliament and inside Parliament to give direction on this issue.
Thank you. And I understand there are callers, and therefore we'll take you back to Mokazi to hear some callers.
All right. Of course, we have a caller there who will be talking to us. But before that, let's look at some of the comments coming in, and perhaps Bwana Mutegi will also respond to this, because this is Eric Ember who says, it's we Kenyans to blame ourselves. Cabinet Secretary steals 2 billion shillings. He uses 50 million shillings to bribe the auditors, 50 million to bribe the court, and he's acquitted. We should introduce hanging like China. Eric Ember. So basically personal blame, and then the place of perhaps coming up with very stringent measures. What do you have to say to that? What do you have to say to that, Bwana Mutegi?
You know,
in stringent measures. You know,
maybe in places like China or Japan, people hang themselves if they are found with corruption.
You're hanged.
People hang themselves even before they are taken to court, or in other places they're shot. In a place like not democracy, they shoot them.
Yes, I'm aware that has happened. There are actually two distinct things to say here. One is that in a place like China, that for a long time they have had a law that imposes the capital sentence, that is death, if you are proved to be corrupt. But in places like Japan and the Far East, it is actually ingrained in society. The ethical culture of the society is such that if you are suspected to be corrupt, it is such an indignifying thing that many people opt to punish themselves other than face the society, because it's seen to be a betrayal. So those are two different standards. But we wouldn't call for the capital